And hello, my name is Martin, and in this video what we're going to do is we are going to start shaping the landscape that we had created earlier in the previous tutorial. So what I want to do first is I'm just going to get a little bit closer to it and just show you that this thing is absolutely 100% flat. What we'll want to do is go up here to modes. We want to go back into the landscaping tool. And this time, instead of being in the manage part, we're going to go to the sculpt. Now, what we should see is what looks like a brush. Well, really what it is one outside circle, which is solid, an inside circle, which has got like a soft edge to it, and then a hash mark, which is in the middle, which denotes where the center of this actually is. So basically what we have going across the top, if we look at the different icons that we have here, and let me close this down so we can actually see all the different options that we have there. So the first one is sculpt. Sculpt, smooth, flatten will work. They'll do slightly different things, but the idea here is that we're either moving up or moving down the area of the landscape, the grid that we saw when we created this, that green grid that was in the background. From there we have a ramp. The ramp is a tool. We'll take a look at it later, but basically it makes ramps. So essentially it fits in with these four because it does deform this, but there it creates a specific shape. As opposed to back here where there's not a very specific shape for that. The next three is erosion, hydro, and noise. Essentially what these are going to do is distort, but not necessarily pull way up or push way down the material. So what it'll do is it'll create like erosion will create the effect of like wind and environmental conditions. So it'll deform it a little bit. Hydro will make it look like water had flowed through this area, and noise will create an effect based off of the dark and the light that is present in either the texture or the material that you use to create a negative or a positive space up or down. From there, retop is actually new. Retop is basically when you create a plateau that goes straight up, where from one vertex to the other vertex, it goes from the very top of the structure all the way down to the very bottom. What's going to end up happening is the material that's on there is stretched. So what retop does is it actually goes in and creates more density and more vertices in the material. So then that way not in the material, in the landscape, so then that way the material isn't going to be as stretched. Visibility will allow us to be able to cut a hole through this. So if we're going to make a cave or a hole or a tunnel or anything like that, visibility is what we're going to use, but we actually have to do something prior to getting that set up. We'll have to do something to the material itself. Mirror we're not going to use, but basically what it does is just an easy way to make a copy of a certain area and then basically copy and paste it to another area, or make like a mirror image of the same thing. So if you're creating a valley, that's kind of an easy way to set something up. The select and copy we're not going to use so much, and then these tools back here are the different tools that will show us the type of pattern that we're actually using. So right now we're using a circle. If we, let's say, chose that, we would have a different object. The pattern would be something different. And then the components, where it actually is grabbing, I guess it looks like that whole box. So if you needed to create something that was very blocky, that might be a very interesting way to do that. Anyways, so then you have the strength of the brush, which is how strong, let me put this back on circle, would be how much influence the brush has. Radius would be obviously how wide it is. Smooth would be how the drop off comes off. With, when it comes up, does it look spherical? Does it look linear? Does it look smooth? We'll do a couple of those. And then the fall off is actually how much area there is between, or how thick the top is versus how I guess how much slope you have on the side. Something can be straight up and down and it would not have that much fall off, whereas if it had a bigger fall off, you would have a more of a slope going into it. So we'll take a look at all of these in a minute. Let's leave it on spherical. And there we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go somewhere near the house so we have a point of reference for this. And remember that we said what we wanted to do was sort of create a thing that looked like we were in the mountains. And so let's go ahead and do that. Now, one of the things that I didn't cover in class that we can do with this, and we should do with this, is we should actually make a border with the landscape that is like mountains, or something high enough that the character itself or the person who's playing cannot jump over the edge of the mountains. So that's what I'm going to do with this real quick. Now, to do this, obviously, the brush size that I have right now is pretty small. The area that I need to do is quite large. So this is, I'm just going to increase the size of the brush. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and bring that up. Okay, so now that we've seen what these tools do up here, let's go ahead and actually change part of the shape here a little bit and see how some of these tools work. So I'm going to set up this area back here that was supposed to have some mountains in it. Let's make the tool a little bit smaller. There we go. And I'm going to come right into the grid so we can see how this looks. So what I'm going to do right now is with the tool and the strength that it is with sculpt, I'm going to just left click with my mouse. Okay. So now we've created something that more or less looks like a plateau. All I did was hold my left mouse click. Let me do another one. There we go. And so now we have something that looks like that. All right. If we change, let's say something like the fall off or the smooth, let's go to linear, so we can see any bit of a difference there. Not too much. Let's see spherical. I guess that one looks a little bit more rounded at the top than the other ones did. And let's change something like the strength. Let's move it all the way up to 100. Okay. And let's move that down. And all I'm doing is playing around with the different settings. You see that when this was set to strength at 0, nothing happened. When it was at 1, it moved faster. So if we wanted to build slowly, we could create smaller. Well, I don't mean smaller. It would just take longer for that area to build. You just have to hold. Like right now, I'm just still holding, still holding, still holding. Now I've let go. All right. So now we have a way to be able to control the brush. From there, the other thing obviously you can do is make the brush wider. You can make the brush strength stronger. We can increase the size of the brush so it's taking up more area. So what I usually do is instead of just holding it over one area, I will wiggle it around a little bit like that, and then that will start to build stuff that more or less looks like something, you know, like mountains. So I'm just going to go ahead. Now the other thing that I'm also doing right now is I'm going along the edge, and I'm going to build up enough of height that the first-person player cannot actually jump off of this, because the mountains in the background would be very, very tall. Okay, so let me just push play real quick. We'll look at the character's perspective and we'll see what that looks like. And that looks like some pretty tall mountains there. Okay, let's move backwards. All right, pretty neat. Okay, so from there, the next thing that we can do is we can actually take the exact same tool, Sculpt, and if we hold the Shift key while we're holding the left key down, what will actually happen is we will cause a depression. So instead of pushing up, what's happening now is it pushed down. So remember that I said we wanted to create something that was like a little water stream or something that was going by. So I'm going to go ahead and start cutting that out by holding Shift, left clicking, and dragging out. Okay. So let's get a little closer and see what we've got. Alright. So definitely something that would be deep enough that would be considered like a river. Let's go ahead and actually have it go off the map there. Now I've got a little bit of the edge of this hanging off the side right there. You know, if there was going to be some kind of like a pier there with like maybe a boat mesh or something like that that the character needed to get on to go down the river, or whatever they were supposed to do in the level, you might leave that like that. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to use another tool called the flatten tool. So I'm going to jump over the smooth tool and we'll go to the flatten tool. And what the flatten tool is going to do is it's going to take whatever area I click on and then keep that area going. So basically I'll be able to, I don't have to worry about it going up so far that it ends up becoming a mountain. What it'll do is it'll flatten it out. So let me go ahead and click, and I'm dragging across, and you'll see that what it did was it built that area back in, but it kept it flat, right? Now, what it did do is it created a pinch right there in my river. So I'm going to go ahead and pull some of that mountain back, and we'll go back to the sculpt tool and hold the Shift key. And I might even make my brush a little bit smaller at this point. Okay, and let's go Shift. Okay, let's go in and see if we've got something that's wide enough for the river. If not, we'll just pull the mountains back. Now I might take my tool strength. There we go. Now we're getting somewhere. Okay, so if we were coming down the river this way, we would have land all the way up to about right there. A little piece of it hanging off the edge, that's fine. Not worried about that. But we got a little bit of our river back, and let's redraw some mountains here. So same tool, all I'm going to do is just left click and drag up, or drag around I should say, until I get the height that I'm looking for. And a lot of times to create depth, you'll just go and make some mountains in the background. Okay. So from the character's perspective, that's what they're going to see. All right, very, very cool. Okay, so that is the sculpt tool, the smooth, well, okay, so the thing that we haven't talked about yet is the smooth tool. Right here we got a lot of ridging that happened from us moving back and forth with the pushing the sculpting. So what the smooth tool will do is exactly what it feels, exactly what it sounds like, is it's going to take the average of the up and down in the area that the tool is in and not really push it anymore beyond that point. So what we get is this sort of like smoothing effect that happens, which is really cool to add, especially to the bottom of the river. Now the other thing that we're also doing is we're not doing this to the edge so much to keep the edge, well, maybe a little bit, just to smooth out the edge a little bit. It just depends on whether you want that to be steep or not, whether you want the character to be able to move through there. So, and then the other thing we're also doing is we're making sure that the ooh, that was too much. Let's pull that back. Okay. And a lot of what you're seeing now is that I'm actually doing a lot of like jumping back and forth between different tools, and it's not uncommon to have to do that if you're working with graphics. So we'll go back to smooth. We'll just sort of go over the edges a little bit. And make it a little bit less bumpy in certain areas. Okay, very cool. So that is the sculpt, the smooth, and the flatten. Let's go ahead and use the ramp tool real quick, and we'll see what that does. So when you have the ramp tool selected, what you'll do is click somewhere on the screen, click somewhere else on the screen, and then pull the second one up. Now the options that you're going to have in the details panel is reset, add ramp, and then these two options, which is ramp width and the side fall off. So you'll see that when I move the side fall off, what that's doing is it's increasing the width of the stuff in the middle, or the ramp itself, and that the area from the edge of the ramp going down to the bottom is going to be very thin. Whereas if we did it, let's say like this, we'd have a very thin ramp with a lot more of the ramp on the side. So let's go ahead and make a thick ramp like this, and we'll see the edge on that, and then we'll look and see what it looks like when we do a thinner one. Okay, so once you have the ramp in the position that you want, we'll go ahead and click on add ramp, and we'll see that we got now a pretty wide ramp with pretty much straight sides falling off. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is if I wanted to create another ramp from this same location, I could just drag that position off and find a new point for it. And then wherever that new point is, if I hit add ramp, I'd have another ramp coming from that point. So that's a cool little trick right there. But now if I did want to have the ramp starting from a completely different point, what I would do is hit reset, which will get rid of the initial point. And then we go and we click somewhere on our screen, and then we click again, drag the second one up, and this time we will make this fairly narrow. So let me make it a very narrow ramp, and we'll see what we get on the sides. Let's go ahead and add ramp, and you'll see that now we have something that has quite a bit more side to it. I mean, it almost looks like this is part of the ramp. It's so much part of the side. It's very different from here where we had way better defined sides. And over here we have a very thin ramp that looks almost more organic. The ones back there look built because they're too perfect, and this one looks like either older or maybe like just a regular path going up, maybe something that nature built. Anyways, so the next thing that we'll look at is another way to use the flatten tool is imagine that like right now I don't want that depression or these ramps. The easiest way to erase them is to grab the flatten tool, start somewhere where the area is flat, click there first with left, and then click and drag over the area that you were working with, and basically it flattens the area back out. And let's get rid of this. Whoops. See, we started where the ramp was, and we got a little bit of a plane or a plateau there. So actually, yeah, a plateau. So let me do that, and then that way we've got rid of that. Okay, very cool. All right, so that is now the erosion, the hydro, I'm sorry. So that's it for this video because it's already starting to get a little bit long. When we come back in the next video, we'll look at the hydro, the noise, the retop, and then we'll do a video about how to use the paint tool. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.